Hey, thanks for joining us for another Broadfield Liquid Lunch and Learn every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. For those of you who tune in repeatedly and are checking us out on our new platform at broadfield.live, when you see that loop reel up and running before the show starts, it's just so we have a video feed as we go live, especially when we have a guest joining us like we did today. You'll see him in the corner here, Matt Frazier from Lumix. Hey, Matt, how are you?
I'm doing good. Sorry, I just want to make sure I was off mute. I apologize, Jim. I'm doing great.
No problem. I wanted to make sure the mic was working too. So that's the
Yeah.
reason we run that video loop before we go live. So we made sure that we get all our video feeds running. It sometimes takes time to get our feed up to LinkedIn Live, where we are simulcasting as well. And then, of course, we also invite our guests, like Matt, on to join us for a cocktail before the show. It is Liquid Lunch and Learn. Matt, I picked this up just before last week's show, right from the brewery around the corner. It's Top Gun IPA. It's a nice double IPA brewed right here on Long Island. So next time you come visit us out on Long Island, we'll make sure we take the trip over there. What have you got for us today?
I'm doing a Voodoo Ranger right now. New
choice.
Belgian brewing. I'm in Colorado, so I try to keep it Colorado.
That's awesome. I was introduced to New Belgium on Southwest Airlines. That was like the only decent beer that they would offer on the flights. So it ties in really well to Top Gun IPA.
Yes. Yeah, it would work well on a plane, no doubt. No doubt about it.
Absolutely, especially if you're flying Southwest. Not always the most reliable, but very convenient here out of Long Island. So Matt, we're going to get started in just a moment here. I do want to talk a little bit about the platform that we are streaming to. We've been using this new platform called Digital Joy. We worked with you to put together some poll questions. So we encourage our dealers to answer the poll questions as they pop up on the left-hand side of your screen. On the right-hand side of your screen, we also have a chat engine. This is your opportunity to ask questions throughout the show, and I will bring those questions to Matt, who is joining us today. Matt, this is the reason why I asked you to be here. You're the expert. You're going to be able to answer these questions that do come up a lot more easily than I can, and with a lot more detailed information, of course. Now, I am not the camera guy here at Broadfield, but we do have Pete Snyder. We do have our Broadfield sales team who is very well versed with the cameras and very well trained with the Panasonic Lumix line and with the brand new camcorders that we are going to talk about today. So, Matt, if you're ready, let's get into the show.
Yeah, let's get started. I'm ready to go.
Before we talk about the brand new camcorders, I know you've been on our show before, but why don't we take a moment for you to introduce yourself to the Broadfield dealer audience?
Yeah, so my name's Matt Frazier. I work for Panasonic it's a consumer group. It falls under the Lumix brand, but obviously there's been a lot of cross-platform when it comes to consumer products being used for professional applications. And consumer cameras beginning to reach more to the professional applications. So I deal with all of our business development activities. And frankly, I'm one of the two guys who approves any new integrators that want to come on board and sell Lumix products. So that's what I do.
And that's really our goal here at Broadfield. Our goal is to work with you to bring some of these integrators into the fold. And that's why we get excited about introducing new products that really fit in well in that market space. And the reason I asked you to join us today is to introduce the two brand new camcorders, the HC-X2 and the HC-X20. As you can see, these camcorder models are available. They're shipping now. The HC-X20 at $25.99 MSRP, and the HC-X2 at $31.99.99 MSRP. And we're going to ask Matt to kind of introduce these cameras to us and to talk a little bit about them. So Matt, why don't we start with the HC-X20?
Perfect. Well, we go ahead and start with the X20. But before we get too deep into the X20, just want to make sure your audience is aware. These are like fresh off the grill. They are still hot to the touch. So it's not like you're getting them 4 or 5 months after they're in market. Broadfield got them as fast as anybody in the marketplace. So they're ready to sell today if you have need for them. So to begin, we're going to talk about the X20. Keep in mind that every feature that's in the X20 will also be in the X2. So the X2 will add some additional features. I thought it'd be easier to start with the 20 and then kind of walk our way up. So really, the signature benefit to going to these two cameras is the fact that you're going to a 1-inch type sensor. Whereas a lot of these ENG style cameras are using 1/3 of an inch or 1/2 inch or even 1/4 inch size sensors. This gives you a much better low light sensitivity, better dynamic range out of the image. In addition, it's also going to give us just better detail overall and a shallower depth of field. So if you want something that's sort of closer to that cinema look, but you don't want to have to fight focus all the time, it really is a great compromise versus going to like a Super 35 or Micro Four Thirds sensor camera. The camera will include a 20 times optical zoom as well. So
Great.
it starts with a pretty darn wide 24.5 millimeter. Now, when we say 24.5, that's the equivalent of like a photo camera's 24.5 millimeters. So it's a nice wide angle view, goes out to 24 times optical zoom. And the key features to this camera, because it is an ENG style product, it's going to include things like 4K video at up to 60 frames per second. It can do 10-bit video as well. It includes XLR audio jacks, HDMI output. And one of my favorite features is the built-in Wi-Fi function, which we'll go into more detail later on. But I'll tell you what, if you want to live stream direct from a camera, this will be about as easy a live streaming solution as you're going to find. As we move up to the X2, where the X2 really excels is as a post-production camera, because in this camera, we're going to offer you access to what we call Vlog and HLG, which Vlog is a very flat picture profile that works great for post-production to give you more dynamic range. HLG is great for live event broadcast if you're doing a live event HDR broadcast. This camera also includes an SDI port, so you're going to have access to an SDI port on this camera, whereas the X20 does not provide that. This camera will also give you timecode in and out. And it includes the Wi-Fi function, but also adds to it an Ethernet port. And if you're going to be doing recording to this product, it's going to include the ability to do what's called a proxy file, which we'll get into more detail on in a little bit.
That's great. And Matt, we're going to ask you to dive into some of these features and details. I do want to answer one of our dealers' questions that just came up, and they're curious to know what camera you're using to come into us today. I know these two new cameras are brand new, hot off the press. I don't think you've even had time to set one up. But what camera are you using?
I do have one here, actually.
Oh, you do? Awesome.
Yeah, I have one on camera now. Unfortunately, I can't shoot myself with it and show it to you at the same time. I am actually on a Panasonic S5, and I'm on a 50 millimeter f1.4 lens. Honestly, the reason I'm doing it is I want you to see what a mess there is behind me, so it gives me a nice shallow depth of field. That's why I did it. So that's what I'm shooting on.
Absolutely. That's awesome. So now let's go into some of the features. And through this, we're going to go over some of the features that are shared between the two models of the cameras, the 20 and the X2. But we're also going to talk about some of the features that are unique in that production camera with the X2 model. First of all, starting with what you were talking about with the optical zoom and that wide angle lens.
Yeah, so it's a 20 times optical zoom. It's f2.8 at the wide angle and f4.5 at the telephoto. I know some people might get confused because like our X2000 starts at an f1.8. Remember, the sensor in this camera is nearly 4 times the size of the sensor that's in the X2000. So this is a much better low light camera, even though it's an f2.8 lens. That's the benefit of going to this 1 inch type sensor. The camera, because of this higher resolution lens and higher quality lens, you're going to get very, very sharp images from the product. And then we'll move on to the next slide.
Absolutely. And I do want to say with that 1 inch lens, because I'm following some of the comments and Q&As that are coming in.
Sure.
There are some PTZ camera models now that are using a 1 inch image sensor, but it is not something you're going to find in your typical PTZ camera, especially in the live production or live streaming format. By taking this 1 inch lens with everything else that these camcorders offer and integrating them into a live production workflow, you are going to get a really nice image, especially in low light situations, house of worship, corporate AV, where maybe you're even shooting under fluorescent lighting or other kind of commercial lighting. It's really going to give you a great picture.
Yeah, especially with house of worship where you may have stained glass behind your subject because that gets very bright and you end up with a person who's in a very dark, shadowy look.
Yep.
That extra dynamic range will be very useful there. And it's, cameras like our 145 or our UE 150, they include a 1-inch type sensor. So that should give you some idea of how this would compare versus some of the Panasonic broadcast PTZ products.
Absolutely. And I think
now,
one of the other things that's really nice about a traditional camcorder format is the optical image stabilization and some of the stuff that we're going to talk about now.
Yeah, so we've done a lot of refinement with this system. We always talk about this little vinyl ball that we put into the design. If you look in the graphic on the right, you can see this helps to absorb some of the energy as you're moving around to give you a more steady image, along with moving the lens system up, down, left, and right. But we've also done some substantial improvements in what's called the algorithm. We're now allowing you to tell the camera what it is you intend to do. So you'll see that we have 3 different settings for stabilization. We have the normal setting, which would just be kind of run and gun, general purpose stabilization. That's great if you're going to just be moving around with the camera. You don't necessarily have a fixed subject you're trying to interview. Whereas if you're doing an interview with someone, but you don't want to bring out the tripod, that's when you would use the stable option.
Sure.
It's going to do everything in its power to fight against your hand movements. So it's not going to do great for panning. If you have it in stable and you pan, you're going to move and then all of a sudden the lens will snap along after you've reached the end. So don't use stable for run and gun, but it's great if you're going to do a locked off shot. You don't want to pull the tripod out. And then pan and tilt is awesome. It gives you a locked up look, a lockdown look like it's on a tripod. And then if you just pan up and down, or you pan left to right or tilt up and down, it'll still allow for that movement without fighting against you. So a nice way to be able to handhold the product and still get really good professional looking results.
That's excellent. And then we want to talk about the 4K quality and the auto filter, the autofocus.
Right. So when we go to these larger sensors, the depth of field gets shallower, especially when we're at the longer range of the lens. So for closer to 20 times zoom, that depth of field gets pretty shallow, which means the autofocus system has to be really excellent. And so because of the way the engine works in this camera, we can actually move the lens unit in this about 240 times every second to give you very, very granular, finite adjustment of that autofocus system. And frankly, we've done comparisons versus everything that's been in the market, including our own CX350, and we found that this is our best autofocusing camera, and frankly, in this category, is the best autofocus camera on the market. So if you need autofocus, especially like house of worship applications, this is a great option for that.
That's excellent. And then we want to talk about the manual ring controls.
Right. Because this is a more professional camera, we wanted to incorporate a lot of the professional features people would expect. So we do give you triple rings. So you have a focus ring, you have iris, you have shutter speed, all adjustable. And they're programmable as well. So if you want to program them to do different things, you can program them to do different things if you need them to. Also, we give you 3 different stops of ND filters in the camera as well, which frankly, if you're someone who works with DSLRs or certain cinema cameras, having ND filters, especially for outdoor applications, is a godsend, just to be able to slide them right in the way instead of having to screw them onto the lens or have a matte box attached.
Awesome. Matt, one of the questions just came up is, does this pair with the Lumix Tether for control?
Unfortunately, this will not work with Lumix Tether because it's technically not a Lumix camera. I know my shirt says Lumix, but this is actually a Panasonic consumer camera. We have a different way of controlling this camera. It is something we've asked for, and maybe at some point, someday, we can do an update to allow it to work.
And I know as we're going through the presentation, we are going to talk a little bit about some of the accessories and some of the different control protocols and stuff on there that is available. Sure. So we will touch on that as well. Getting back to the features, let's talk about the high quality recording.
Yeah, so let's talk about the codecs that the camera includes. So we include .mov files in H.264 or H.265. We have standard MP4. We also have AVC HD and for the full HD codecs if you want it. That you 10-bit videoed up to 4K 60p in this product, which I think is just an awesome function to be able to have.
Yep. If
you need 422 color instead of 420, we can do that at up to 4K 30p. And then all the 1080 options offer 422 10-bit as well. So if you're going to be delivering in just standard 1080, you can absolutely do that with a 422 color sampling in 10-bit in standard full high def.
Awesome, Matt. We have this slide up on the screen now because something happened to your camera feed. I don't know if you knocked your camera over. I don't know what's going on, but all we see is the top of your head and your ceiling.
That's weird. Let me see what's going on. I'll have to change my device. I have no idea why it switched cameras.
It's not a problem. We can pull up the slide in the meantime. And
yeah, let's just keep talking with the slide up.
This is the beauty of live video. We can keep on going. It's not a problem at all. And the next feature we have to talk about is the super slow motion capabilities.
Right. So for a lot of people, they're going to deliver in like 4K 30 or they're going to deliver in 4K 24.
Okay.
But, you know, that 4K 60 gives you the ability to use the slow-mo function at 60 frames per second. But if you're delivering in full high definition, we can actually deliver up to 120 frames per second in slow-mo. And it's all pre-slowed in the camera. So you don't have to do any slowdown in post. You just set what you want the deliverable frame rate to be, and then your shooting frame rate, and you can get up to 120 frames per second.
That's
and
awesome.
I should also be back. I should also be back now.
You are back. We've got your video feed. You're looking great. And now this is where we were talking before about some of the differences between the X20 and the X2 and how you introduced the X2 as the perfect post-production camera based on that vlog capability.
Yeah, so we wanted to sort of talk about this kind of like from lens and sensor back to the codec. Yep. And now let's talk a bit about the workflows, right? Sure. So let's say I'm doing documentary work, or maybe I work for, a company that does both live event and then we're shooting BTS or background footage for a post edit. The nice thing here is that you can shoot with this camera in our vlog log profile, which gives you about 3 stops more dynamic range over what you can deliver in our Rec 709 profile. What log allows you to do is it effectively gives you a very flat, awful looking image. It's terrible on its own. You have to literally run it through. You have to run it through post.
Sure.
But this allows you then to adjust the image and sort of move the bits where you want them to be. So if I need to bring the highlights down and bring the shadows up, I can customize that image to do this. And I still have, enough bit depth to not have a lot of banding in the background. So this is a great feature, especially for a 1-inch sensor camera. So I'm really happy we're doing this in the X2.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I can see a lot of producers that are doing that type of content are really appreciating that capability.
Right. Now, the X20 and the X2, they both have HDMI out that are live and clean. The X2 will add SDI output, which means a lot of people are going to want to use these as a supplemental camera to maybe be able to get a tighter shot in a live production. And you may be working with different camera brands. Shame on you for doing that, but obviously I'm joking. Clearly, we're going to have to mix it up with different brands. So we give you a tremendous amount of control over the color matrix in this camera. So if you're needed to match other cameras, we give you 16 axes of independent color correction. But if we go to the next slide, you can see a laundry list of different functions that you have the ability to adjust. So whether it's how we manage detail in skin tones or backgrounds, you can do that. We have, red, blue gain control settings within the camera. You can adjust chroma level on your own, even access to the color matrix as well. You get master pedestal function to match black point, white clipping point. So this gives you an incredibly flexible platform to be able to match other cameras, especially given the price points of these two products.
Absolutely. And this is where I'm going to take a moment and read this entire slide verbatim. We're just offering this slide to show you all of that capability that Matt talked about. It's really impressive. Right. And if you need to see this menu, if you're interested in having this slide deck, it's something we can definitely share with you after the presentation. But there really is a lot of different adjustment controls available on these cameras, which I think is really good. Now, Matt, you just spoke about the HDMI and SDI output capability on the X2. And obviously, we know the different workflows and stuff that's going to play into, especially when you start getting into a sports production or even house of worship. A lot of times running that SDI cable back to the production system is going to be your most professional and most reliable way of getting that feedback back. And that's really what we're showing, is having all of that capability built into this camera.
Right, so you have 3G SDI and HDMI. They both can be run at the same time. They can be run simultaneously along with the viewfinder or the LCD screen on the camera. So if you want to add a monitor on top with HDMI, run SDI back, or vice versa, you can absolutely do this in any way you want. Maybe you want to use some some stream decks to capture the live 4K out from the HDMI port while you're live streaming in 1080 over SDI. All of those things are options with the camera, and we can be clean on any one of those outputs if you need it.
Absolutely, that's awesome. And then double memory slot. And not only are we given a double memory slot, but you actually have some configurable ways of using those media cards.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the top, we talk about what we call dual codec recording. That's just Panasonic's way of saying that the X2 can do a proxy file. So you can have a 720p file that's highly compressed for the edit, and then you can have the master file that's used for the final render out. You have the ability to do relay recording. That's just allows you to record to memory card 1. When memory card 1's full, it'll automatically hand off. You won't lose any data to memory card 2. You just pop out memory card 1, drop in memory card 3, it'll hand back off again. So truly unlimited recording with this camera up to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's a very robust platform. Operates from effectively 0 degrees up to 14 degrees Fahrenheit all the way up to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. We also have the ability to do just redundancy recording. So if you want 2 of the same file, one to memory card 1, one to memory card 2, you can do that. Personally, one of my favorite options in the camera is that I can have one memory card just running the whole time, while the other one, when I hit record pause, that'll create the new clips for record pause. And that way, if something happened that was funny that maybe I want to have, sort of a blooper reel of what's going on, that gives me the ability to document blooper reel stuff. Or if I'm recording something where there could be, like a war scene going on in the background for some reason, you can still potentially have captured that even though you'd stop recording.
And man, I gotta tell you, I love that format too for live production workflow. When we're talking about matching this camera up in live production space where maybe some PTZ cameras being used, we're talking to videographers and producers who are used to that constant feed from the camera. Now, when they get that constant feed in the live production, they're getting that constant record file, but then they're also getting the neater kind of cut up clips that they could use in their post-production workflow in the BTS stuff or whatever else they're producing. It really gives you kind of the best of both worlds.
Well, you'd have embedded time code on both, so you can import both those files and sync them together for a multicam edit, even though they're the same clip. And you'd have all your edit marks and everything on the timeline. And then if for some reason you wanted to cut to what was going on in the, the behind the scenes or, the blooper portion, you can absolutely just bring that right in. So it makes the edit pretty simple.
Absolutely. And I didn't want to forget to mention again, the proxy file capability with the X2, because that also is going to tremendously help out in that post-production workflow.
Absolutely.
And now we're going to talk about the XLR audio inputs, which is awesome.
I think in a camera like this, everybody would expect XLR audio. It's channel 1, channel 2. It'll do up to 48-bit. 24-bit, 48 kilohertz is what it'll be capable of doing. And the nice thing is it still gives you all of your just manual controls fully accessible right from here. So no need to go into the menu to adjust your gain settings or to turn on a low pass, high pass filter. All of that can just be done with the switch on the side of the camera.
That's great.
So when it comes to battery life, a very efficient engine that's in this camera. So the battery that ships with it is the VBR59. So that's what's supplied with it. It's going to give you on the X2 about almost 4 hours. It's 3 hours and 50 minutes of recording time. On the X20, there's a little bit more going on with that camera. So the X2, 3 hours and 50. The X20, there's a little less going on with that. So you're going to get about 4.5 hours, almost 4.5 hours of recording time.
Okay.
But if you need a long recording camera, just buy the VBR 118. And this is going to give you more than 7.5 hours on an X2 and almost 9 hours on the X20. So very long recording times. And something else I want to point out, that charger is included with the camera. So you get dual battery charging with the camera. It's included in the box.
That's great. I know that's one of those immediately added accessories. So having that in the box definitely helps with that out-of-box experience.
Yeah, especially for dual battery. It's just nice to be able to charge them both at the same time.
Absolutely. Now, when we were talking about the differences between the cameras, we were talking about some of that live streaming capability. I do want to mention again, the X20 gives you that Wi-Fi connectivity, whereas the X2 offers the Wi-Fi, but it also gives you that Cat6 connection, the hardwired network connection. So if you're going to be, streaming at a school or something where you might not have that Wi-Fi access, you can directly plug into their network. And then, of course, there's going to be encoders available like the Live Seller and stuff like that. But you do have streaming built into the cameras themselves.
Right. So we can stream in Rtsp, RTP, RTMP, RTMPS. Any one of these flavors can be streamed either over Wi-Fi or over the Ethernet connection. Obviously, the Ethernet connection provides a more reliable connection.
Sure.
So depending on how much Wi-Fi traffic you got going on, that's beneficial. You also have the ability to USB tether this to a smart device. So if you want to connect the cameras to just directly to your phone or your tablet, you can engage a network that way as well, which I think is awesome. One little secret benefit to the X20 that we don't publish really well, you can also buy a USB Ethernet adapter for it. So if you want to get the Ethernet connection functionality built into your X20, you simply buy an off-the-market Ethernet adapter. We work with a 1000 base T system on the X2, so you'd want something similar in your Ethernet adapter as well. So lots of functionality and flexibility when it comes to live streaming.
That's great. And it's going to be an amazing quality for a camcorder like this to have that live streaming capability.
Well, and what's really cool too is you actually can build into the camera your Rtsp streaming functionality. So if your primary platforms are things like Twitch or Facebook Live or YouTube Live, as long as you establish a Wi-Fi connection with this camera, you can put your stream key and everything into the camera, and you can start your streams directly from camera. So if you're doing simple live streams where you're not doing external switching, these are great devices to get you right out to any RTMP server option.
Absolutely. And I do want to mention, too, there are a ton of platforms out there like Restream.io or Switchboard Live where you can take this camera, stream directly to them, and then go out to multiple platforms all at the same time, just by having that RTMP, Rtsp capability from the camera itself.
Exactly. And there's a lot of switchers that work with Rtsp and RTMP streams. So you can also integrate this into lots of different switching solutions. So if you have an Ethernet connection locally, or if you want to trust the Wi-Fi connection, you don't necessarily have to run a wire to the camera to get it into your switching.
Yeah, absolutely. And now we had the question come up earlier about the wireless remote control capability. What we're showing here is the remote control modules both over the Wi-Fi or through your remote panel.
Yeah, so this is the same system that we use for cameras like the CX350 on the broadcast side, which is our HCROP app. So if you make a Wi-Fi connection with a smart device like your tablet or smartphone, you have tremendous control over this camera directly from your tablet or smartphone.
That's awesome. And that app is available for both iPhones and Androids, right?
Yep, works on either system. I'm sorry, it's not going to work with your BlackBerry, unfortunately, Jim, but for the rest of us, it's going to work.
I upgraded from my BlackBerry about 3 months ago.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear. So, all right. So I have to be cryptic about this, and then Jim can be less cryptic about what we're about to talk about. So on the right side, if you wanted to add Ethernet support to the X20, these two Anchor Ethernet connected USB to Ethernet devices, we have tested. They're certified by us. They will work. So you can try others. I wouldn't suggest it. I'd stick with what we recommend. Now, if you want to use the remote port on the side of the camera, because you want to be able to control, zoom, record function, iris control, we have some of the supported accessories on screen right now. We use the same protocol as is common for Sony and Canon, and I'm not allowed to say the name of it, but maybe Jim can tell us what it's called.
I believe it's called Lank. Lank is what it's called.
I can't confirm that. That sounds very familiar, but
you can either confirm or deny. But I know that's what Sony and Canon use on their camcorders, and I know it's a really popular protocol, and it's Lank. Right. That's LANC, Lank. Right.
Yeah. I think the key here is it's not the Panasonic analog one that we used to use a number of years ago. It's the other one that Jim might have mentioned that I can't confirm. Okay. So we'll just move on from there.
Excellent. And then we want to talk about all the different tools available here at Broadfield to really get even more out of these cameras. You talked about the HC-X2 having both the HDMI and SDI output capability, or with a bird dot flex encoder or any other encoder, you can also add NDI capabilities. So Matt, one of the things that you and I talked about when we were preparing for today's show is the fact that you have simultaneous output from the camera. means I can have an SDI cable wired back to my production system, but I could also use HDMI to something like the Bird Dot Flex, and now I have NDI capability on that camera too for a very inexpensive upgrade.
Yeah, and a hot topic, sort of a hot tip here. In our cameras, our cameras will embed sound and video over HDMI and SDI.
Okay.
That takes a little processing time to do that. That's why in our menu for the HDMI out and SDI out, you can turn off audio embedding, and that'll cut your latency in half. So
wow.
I would suggest if you're going to do this, make sure you turn the audio off, because you probably don't need the sound going over the SDI or HDMI cable for most of your customers' applications.
No, absolutely. I would say most of our integrators who are dealing with those NDI workflows are the audio's already going into a sound system in the church or in the corporate AV space or wherever they are.
Right.
We also have support for the Atomos Ninja monitors. Now, I know we had talked about the 4K capabilities of the camera itself. The Atomos is available in the Ninja 5 and the Ninja 5 Plus. I think the Ninja 5 is all you would need to support these camcorders, right?
Yeah, there's no reason to make the added dollar investment unless you're going to work with a camera like a GH6, which has 4K 120 and 5.8K output. If you need those, that's when you would do the Ninja 5 Plus. Ninja 5 will be fine. What I think is really exciting here, though, is the Atomos Connect suite of functions, which allows you to effectively set up cloud-based streaming and switching, which is very well integrated within the Atomos workspace. One other cool thing with the Atomos Connect function is the ability to work with Frame.io. So Frame.io, for those of you who don't know, it's a way to deliver content to your client so they can put notes on the video content. What's cool with this is that as you record content, it'll go up. Each take will go up so that it can be much faster to get through the editing process. And so effectively your editor can begin editing instantly. Or if you have really fast turnaround times and you don't necessarily need 10-bit video, you can use this to get your content to your social media team so they can immediately be churning that stuff out onto different platforms very, very quickly. Great for sports. It's awesome for sports use.
Absolutely. And I'll say, we talked a lot about the post-production workflows and what's available through that. This is the future. That camera to cloud workflow is something that we're going to see being adapted in productions all across the country more and more. And having that capability through the Atomos monitors and the Atomos Connect is really a great thing. We also talked about the dual SD cards. So obviously media is going to be a very easy attachment for all of our sales. Broadfield is your source for all Angelbird media, pro-grade media, and of course, storage. SanDisk Professional, LaCie, Seagate, Broadfield is your source for all that stuff as well. Matt, thank you so much for introducing the cameras to us. Super excited about the HC-X2 and the HC-X20. We think there's a great opportunity here with our integrators in the marketplace. I'm just going to do a quick look at our monitors to see if we have any additional questions before we let you go. I do think we covered them all in time. One of the big comments that came in is that the 9 hours of battery life on that extended battery is amazing. Absolutely incredible. So.
Yeah, and guess what? Broadfield has that battery in stock. So you guys can go ahead and sell that battery with your X20s and X2s. They got them in stock there right now for you.
Awesome. Thank you again for joining us. And join Broadfield every Thursday afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Next week, we will be broadcasting live from the Javits Center at NAB New York. So tune in right here throughout the day at broadfield.live to check us out from the Broadfield booth, number 744. If you are going to be in New York, let us know. Reach out to your Broadfield sales team. We'd love to meet you at the show and maybe even invite you to the dealer party that we're hosting right afterwards. So reach out to your Broadfield sales team and join us. Matt, thank you again. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Broadfield Distributing is a value-added distributor of live production, streaming, video editing, and storage products. We only sell to resellers. We are always looking for new dealers, so call us at 1-800-634-5178 or email sales@broadfield.com. You'll like doing business with Broadfield because we make it easy to do business.